Hello again, and welcome to Perfectly Paranormal, episode 87. My name's Annaschmidt, and I'm here every week to share with you true paranormal encounters and information about devils, demons, and dark energy beings that no one else talks about. And today we're kind of stepping away from the dark realm, even though they are included a little bit right at the end of the episode. And we are stepping into the parlour on how to contact those on the other side. We're going to look at what are the good practices that you can use? What are the safe practices you can use? Also, really important, what to avoid. And I'm including some of the negative side effects that I've witnessed in clients who dabble in this type of spiritual practice, whether innocently or with darker intention. Some of the commonly used practices that I'm mentioning today, I have specifically put them in the what to avoid section, so please don't judge me, because I personally doubt their safety. Now, this isn't for everyone, but it's for some people who have mental and emotional vulnerability. Before we delve into our 13 good practices, and yes, 13, don't ask me why, it just came out that way, there are 4 important points to remember. Number 1, think about your intention. Intention is really powerful. You have to be aware of your mental and emotional state when you're doing any type of spiritual work. You need to be calm, you need to be relaxed, you need to be focused, open-minded and settled in your mind and body. If you're having a bad day, just don't do any spiritual work because you're not going to be able to focus on it wholly and solely. So number 2, trust the process. You have to remember to be really, really respectful and don't work from ego. It really is a big, big no-no. Number 3, practice and find the processes that work for you. And also, don't have any preconceived expectations of what you're going to get and how you're going to get it. You will be heard by whoever it is that you are connecting to, but they don't always give a response. Sometimes they're not able to give a response. Or sometimes you're so caught up in how you expect the response to come that you actually miss it. And number 4, be aware that there are trickster energies, not just in the earth reality, but also in the spiritual realities. These beings sit and wait for people to use particular processes for connecting with the other side. And they know that there are vulnerable people that are going to be using these processes. So now I think we're ready to step into our 13 good practices that people can use to contact or communicate with those on the other side. Number 1, using your psychic skills. It sounds really obvious, but a lot of people think they don't have psychic skills. They put people with psychic skills not necessarily on a pedestal, but they've got a different level of skill, we might say. Well, they do in some degrees, depending on what you're using it for. We all have psychic abilities. We all do. You use that gut instinct all the time. So use your ESP to be aware of signs in the environment. What can you see? What can you hear? What can you feel? Whether it's in your mind, your body, and in the environment around you. You'd be surprised how often our loved ones can use our environment to convey messages, whether it be through songs on the radio, seeing a number or a symbol, something that means something to you. Sometimes people say that butterflies are a sign that your loved one is connecting with you. I actually had a sign on a bus one day that was the perfect message from a relative. It was so funny. So it just triggered me back to the time when I was actually doing a particular spiritual practice, trying to connect with someone. And I didn't get my response straight away. And I was like, oh, it's not working. It's never going to work. And I got really downhearted. And then I was just out in the car one day and there's this bus that pulled up alongside me. And I looked at the sign and I went, okay, I get it. Thank you very much. So try not to make the responses happen. Try not to focus on them too much. Because when you're stressing over it, you're going to miss the really obvious things that spirits will use to communicate with you. Now, number 2, a lot of people use this method. Your dreams. What you can do before you go to bed, if you want to talk to a specific relative or a friend who has passed, ask them a question. Say their name, see their face in your mind. You can say your question out loud, you can say it in your mind, and then just go to sleep as you normally would. And when you wake up in the morning, see if you can remember your dream. Number 3, meditation is a really good way to connect with a loved one. All these things I'm going to share today, you might not be able to use all of them. You might not be able to use 5 or 6 of them. There might be one specific way that you can connect with a loved one on the other side. That is your go-to. You can develop the others later on. You've just got to practice. You've got to practice. So meditation is a great way because you're in that relaxed mind state. You've set your intention. I want to connect with Dad. I want to ask Dad a question. It'd be really great to see his beautiful smiling face again. And you put out that intention and you do your meditation. Number 4, prayer. Now, prayer just isn't for religious people. Like, I use prayers all the time when I'm working with the archangels, when I'm working with the angelic realm, even when I'm working sometimes with the Christ consciousness energy. You can say a prayer about a loved one. They will hear you. Remember, I said that intention will create the connection. And sometimes I've done this with people who really don't even believe. They're like, this is all a load of rubbish. It's never going to work. I said, just give it a go. Put it out there, send whoever it is you want to connect to, send them a message, and then just see how they respond. You would be surprised how often the skeptics get responses. Now, number 5 is holding a loved one's favourite possession, or it can be having that favourite possession in pride of place in your home. Somewhere where you see it every day, you might sleep next to it, you might have a photo next to your bed, you might wear your mum's ring, or you're using your dad's keychain, or you might have something in your house. Like I had my dad's pipe. It used to sit in my house for a long, long, long time. I actually gifted it to a friend who has a spirit who I knew would love it. He actually came to my house and he pointed it out. And when I was talking to my friend one day, I went, oh, he wants the pipe. And I knew my dad wouldn't mind. He knew that it would be going to a good home. Another example, when my dad passed, I used to drive his little car everywhere for about 10 years. And my mum didn't drive, and the car would have just sat there and sat there and sat there. She didn't want to sell it because it reminded her of Dad. And I said, look, do you mind if I drive it? Because at that particular time, my car had literally carked it. And I'm like, I'm going to have to buy a new car. And I'm like, Dad's car's sitting there. And I used to take Mum shopping and I used to take her on outings, but the car lived at my house. Now, I called it Poppy's car because when my children were little, I didn't call them Mum and Dad or, their names because then small children mimic what the parents are doing. So I used to call my dad Poppy, and it lasted right until the day he passed. The same for my mum. She was always Nanny. So I would call it Poppy's car. And when I drove it, I used to think of him quite often. And occasionally I'd be just zooming along, just thinking about where I'm going and what I'm doing. And he would drop into the passenger seat. Oh, it was so funny. Oh, it was lovely. It was really, really lovely. And he'd sit there in his blue jacket and his grey pants and he'd have his blue beanie on and he'd turn and he'd look at me. Now, there's probably those of you out there going, are you looking at the road? Are you driving? Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Like, I would see him drop into the passenger seat in my peripheral vision, but I would see him in my mind. So yes, I was focusing on the road. So he'd sit there and he'd smile at me and he'd be there for maybe a minute or two and then poof, off he's gone again. He, I think, he was really chuffed that I was driving his car. He was really happy that it stayed in the family. Now, number 6. Writing letters. People forget to write letters these days. Everything is digital. I mean, you can send your mum a text message. I suppose you could do that. You could write her an email. Why am I limiting this to just writing letters? So we're talking about communication of the written form. That's probably a better name for number 6. Many people find comfort in writing, whichever form you want to use. But often, letters are very personal because it's your handwriting. I don't know what it is about pen and paper, but it just has more connection than writing in a digital way. So write your deceased loved one a letter. Express all your thoughts, all your worries, your emotions, whatever it is you want to say, if you want closure, whatever it is that's bothering you, write it down. Because the thing is, you're thinking what you're writing, you're seeing what you're writing, and you're actually writing it down. So you're getting that 3-way process of connecting with them. I just think that writing on paper has a really powerful, I don't know what it is about it. Someone just said to me, it amplifies your intention, which is pretty much what I've just said, but in 3 words instead of me saying it in a whole paragraph. Now, number 7, working with a trusted medium. Now, this is a tricky one because there's a lot of fakers out there. You really have to find yourself a trusted, authentic, genuine person. Look for references. Look online, look at websites, talk to people. Always suss out your mediums because there are really genuine people out there, but there are a lot of charlatans that will take your money and just tell you what you want to hear, and it's not authentic. You're not getting what you need from the connection. Number 8, have you ever thought about setting up an altar at home? Now, I'm not talking about a witchcraft altar. I'm talking about an altar to honour your loved one. And it's pretty simple and easy to do. A lot of people have photographs on their mantelpiece of the person. Or you might have a photograph wall. That, in a way, is a kind of altar because you are honouring the people. So you can personalise your altar by having favourite photos, some of their favourite items. They can be big or small. It doesn't really matter. What you feel connected to, you might want to leave your letters there for them. Now, I've had many conversations with spirits when I've been doing house clearing work, and they have told me how much they appreciate being honoured by their family members. They'll see their photos in the home. They'll hear the conversations. They'll hear the funny things, the naughty things that these people got up to. And I'm thinking about my mum right now because she was a little bit of a naughty lady and she was such a character. And altars really can put a smile on your face when you're feeling a bit sad about a deceased loved one. Honour your memories and their memories and set up a little reminder somewhere in the home about that dearly beloved person. Number 9, mirror gazing. Now, some people have had success connecting with the spirit realm through looking into mirrors, through staring into mirrors. I'm not going to share the process. I'm sure you can find it online. But they relax their mind and they sort of softly gaze into the mirror. And sometimes you can see changes. You can see changes in your face or the environment around you. Possibly you might get a loved one drop in to say hello. I've tried it. It doesn't work for me because I just think my brain just works so fast, and spiritual work and practices makes me quite hyperactive. This practice kind of crosses into the what to avoid section. As some people see mirrors as portals, and portals are gateways into other dimensions. So they can be angelic dimensions, they can be darker dimensions, they can be cosmic dimensions. So a lot of people cover their mirrors. So if you do mirror gazing, please make sure that you ask one of the archangels to close the connection after you finish your session. Most important, you never want to leave energetic doorways open. I'm going to be talking about that a whole heap more in the what to avoid section. Now, number 10, I do this all the time. Talking to your deceased loved ones as you go about your daily life. I do it in the car. I do it when I'm with my kids, when I'm, reading a book. Now, even when I used to use my dad's tools to fix something, or I'd be out in the garden, or I'd be using my mum's cooking bowl, these items and activities would bring back the fond memories. And I'm pretty sure it brings them in to have a sticky beak at what we're up to. So it's just going about your daily life. Quite often we make these things too hard. We make these practices too hard, and we make them rigid, and we make them so orientated that they have to be done a certain way that people just throw their arms in the air and go, it's all too hard. Now, a lot of people will relate to number 11, talking to the deceased loved one at their gravesite. Some people find that going to the gravesite really creates that comforting place, that place to connect. They really need that focal point of, this is where mum and dad's body is, this is where their flowers are, their beautiful headstone. That can be a really strong connection place for people to talk with deceased loved ones. Now, number 12, using paranormal investigation equipment. And you're going, what? It is so true. I get spirits come to me all the time through the paranormal investigation equipment. I will say right now, though, that I generally find that it is just the spirits in the earth environment. I haven't had any spirits from what I call the other side, but there are so many spirits in the environment and they love talking through the devices. So you can use what they call a spirit box, which is a small radio, and I run the radio backwards. And you plug in your headphones or your speaker, be polite, be kind, and you ask questions, and you'll be surprised how many spirits there are in the environment. Also too, a friend suggested this one. If you want to talk to a past loved one, you can use a voice recorder on your phone. You can sit in a very relaxed state, in a nice, calm, peaceful place at your home. No distractions, no noise distractions. Ask a question. See your loved one in your mind. Ask them a question. Just have a little chat with them. Talk to them about your day. Talk to them about your worries. And as you're talking, you would be surprised how often there are spirit voices in the background. But you would need to discern whether they are just spirits in the general environment, or if they give details that only that person that you want to connect to would know. Now, number 13 is always fun. Remembering loved ones on their birthday or at family events. Remember them with laughter and love, not the tears. If the tears are still there, you might need to see a grief counsellor. You might need to talk through the grieving process. So it's something that people like to do. This is something that a friend told me, that she likes to make her mum's favourite cake on her mum's birthday. And even if she's by herself, she will sit down and have a slice of cake with mum. You know, it's whatever works for you. We all need different approaches to connecting with those on the other side. We really, really do. So you've just got to find what works for you. You need to experiment. I've given you some options today. They are by no means the only options. I'm all about giving you ideas and then go and do some practice. Okay, so now we're stepping into what to avoid when attempting to connect with the other side. And there are some big no-nos here in this section. Now, this is going to get some people up in arms when I talk about what my 6 options are. But it's simply from my perspective, from my experiences, from my clients' experiences. When they tell me what they've been doing and then the signs and symptoms that they're experiencing afterwards, I know that some of these practices people use worldwide. By no means am I telling you what to do. I'm just putting out there something to think about. So number 1, giving permission for a spirit to step into your body. Now this is a dangerous practice. Unless you are a trained trance medium, they know what they're doing, they know what to avoid, they have their protection in place and they're grounded. The everyday Joe often have no idea what they're getting into. Now I'm going to give an example. There was a movie made in 2022. Now this is a fictional movie. But quite often things in fiction can transfer into reality to a degree. Now this movie's called Talk to Me. Now before you go looking it up, this movie has a MA 15 plus rating, but really it is an R rating. And I want to talk about that in a minute. This movie highlights risky behaviours with conjuring the dead. Now, I'm not talking about connecting with past loved ones by looking at their photos. This movie highlights just your random person going to a party and they've devised this method of connecting with dead people. That's their words, not mine. My daughter suggested this movie because she knows I love the paranormal, but she did warn me that it had some rather gruesome parts. It is rather unsettling and a little bit, it works on your psychological side, so just beware if you're vulnerable in that area. But I watched this movie because I wanted to see what sort of practices that people were using to talk with others on the other side and for fun, in exclamation marks. Like, it is fictional, but it shows how vulnerable people can be when they don't understand paranormal manipulation. So if you want to watch it, I'm just going to reiterate that warning. It is what I would call an R rating for those people out there that want to take a peek at Talk to Me. Now, number 2, taking drugs to enter a trance-like state. This practice can make some people very vulnerable to dark entities. Like I mentioned earlier, you don't need to take drugs to talk to grandma who's passed away. When people take substances, they alter your mind, they alter your awareness, they alter your reactions and your energetic vibration. Now, you've heard me say it thousands of times. There are dark and demonic beings in the environment around us all the time. And sometimes they're just looking for a doorway in. So avoid the drugs. Now, number 3 is spiritual practices that you don't understand. Always do the research. Talk to people. Observe. Go to a class. How does it feel? If it doesn't feel right, if your body is reacting, you're feeling unwell, you're feeling sick in the mind, sick in the body, you come away feeling traumatized, your intuition is warning you that spiritual practice, or the teacher, is not for you. Now, I've known people, I'm not going to name spiritual practices because I don't want to upset anybody, but I'm just saying be aware. Don't be afraid to step away. I've had people try and keep me in certain spiritual practices. And I've gone, well, thank you very much. I think I've learned what I need to learn from this. And I'm going to go now. Thank you. And away I go. And I never go back again. Because there are, how can I put it? There are underlying factors in some spiritual practices. They're actually not spiritual. They lead into the darker realms. They lead into the black magic, the occultist type practices. So just be aware. Now, mentioning black magic, number 4. Don't use black magic practices to connect to your loved ones. It comes with the black. It just tells you straight away. If you're going into a negative state or you're following a process that you don't understand, you just don't do it. Don't do it because you're opening the doorways to entities. You can't summon grandma to come and talk to you. What if grandma's busy doing something else in the afterlife and she's like, nope. I'm not going to be commanded to come and visit you right now. I mean, we humans, we get in our ego and we just assume that we have the right to ask a spirit to come and connect with us. So black magic, from my perspective, is about summoning entities for various different reasons, which we're not going to go into today. But just be aware that if you're using magic practices to connect with loved ones or spirits or anything else on the other side, and I'm talking the darker entities here, they will come to you and then they can be really hard to remove. So our last 2, number 5, this will upset people, using Ouija boards. Now, I've had some very negative experience with using Ouija boards by myself and with other people. And I see them as portals. They are simply portals that open doorways. And people never close the doorways. Or they just simply put a cloth over it and give it the sign of the cross. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't work. You have to use your intention and your focus. And you can use the angelic connection if you want to close the portal. Now, I was guilty of this back in the early days, back in my late 20s, early 30s. I thought, Ouija boards, I'll make one, hide it from the family, I can use it whenever I want. Well, I opened it, didn't I? And I didn't shut it properly. And I had all sorts of entities running amok in my home. Now, I'm not going to talk about that now, but if you want to have a listen, I talked about that back in episode 19 and episode 21 when I was talking about paranormal addiction. Ouija boards are a way, or spirit boards, I don't know that there's a difference. You're putting an invitation out there for something to connect to you. Now, I'm using the word something because you don't know that what you think looks like dad is actually dad, because it might not be. Now, there's another movie that I can mention here. I don't know the year it was created, but it's called Veronica. It was an eye-opener for me. I found it totally fascinating. It's about some teenage girls who decide that they want to use a Ouija board to connect with one of the girls' fathers. Now, the young girl who had lost her father had grieved, I don't think very much. She was looking after her siblings. Her mother worked all the time. She had to cook for the kids, go to school, get the kids to school. She had 3 younger siblings, very, very young. And she was left with the responsibility of the family, and she missed her dad. She missed him so badly. So they set up this Ouija board. Oh, dear. And it was just horrible. It ended very, very tragically. So if people want to use Ouija boards, I always send them to watch Veronica first, because it is based on a true story. Unlike Talk to Me, which is totally fictional, Veronica is based on a true story. Now, our last number in this section, number 6, is going to seances. Now, similar to Ouija boards, I think that seances open portal doorways. They open doorways into other realities. And even if you're focusing, if you're sitting with someone and you're asking for a specific person to come through, how do you know that that open doorway doesn't have all these little sub-doorways, all these little trapdoors that open into other realities? Because remember, darker entities are always looking for a way in. There are some in the environment. Well, there are a lot in the environment with us. But there are others that live in other dimensions that just wait. And by sitting there, you are giving permission. By being around the table, you are giving permission. Even if you haven't verbalized your permission, you are in the room with people that are opening the doorway. Now, I've not been to a seance simply because I know that I would be triggered. We all know I'm a paranormal addict. I'm not mentally and emotionally triggered, but it would trigger all sorts of spirits, all sorts of entities from this reality, other realities to be hanging around me. But people who have mental and emotional vulnerabilities, they're grieving, they've got a lot of trauma in their life, they might be physically ill. Going to seance sessions, it can just open you up to a whole new level of being manipulated, to being mentally, emotionally destabilized. Now remember, it's just my opinion, but I'm putting it out there. Now before we finish up today, I thought we could look at some of the negative side effects of working with the spiritual realities, connecting with spirits or other entities on the other side. Now, when you're doing these spiritual practices, sometimes, especially the ones in the what to avoid section, you can become very ungrounded. People ask me what that means all the time. When you are grounded, your energy body, which is your chakras, your meridian lines and your energy field, is fully connected to your physical body, which is your muscle, tissue, blood, bone, joint, skin and organs. You have to be in a holistic state. Your energy body lives within your physical body. When you're ungrounded, it means there's a separation. I've done a lot of work for people who do spiritual practices. They might be energy workers, healers, house healers. Quite often, they're ungrounded. They don't ground themselves before their work, after their work, during their work. They don't check on themselves. And they wonder why they can't function. They can't think straight. They have memory issues. They feel vague and scatty, and they've got brain fog type symptoms, which really can mess with your daily life, work, home and family. So really important that if you do want to use a Ouija board, if you do want to go to a seance, you want to experience it, ask the archangels to ground your bodies into Mother Earth so that you stay connected. Now, our next point is that some paranormal practices can become very addictive. A lot of people don't know they've got a level of paranormal addiction. If you find that using Ouija boards or going to seances is something that you're taking the drugs all the time because you want to connect with the other side, or you've joined a black magic group of people who are getting together and doing their stuff, you need to step back and think about what you're doing. Is your paranormal practice or your paranormal addiction taking over your life? Because when you have that amount of intention and you want to connect to the paranormal, they will come to you. And I know this because I am a paranormal addict. I live with it 24/7, 365 days a year. They are around me all the time to some degree, but I control my paranormal addiction. You need to be aware of whether you become addicted to these particular types of activities, because it can mess with your life. It really, really can. And it can draw spirits and other entities to you like moths to a flame. Now, connecting with past loved ones, this is going to sound really obvious, but a lot of people avoid it, will bring up grief, shame, blame, guilt. It will bring up abandonment issues. It will bring up vulnerability. You really need to see a mental health professional. If you find that going to these types of activities or going to a spiritual class, something that seems quite innocent and it's triggering you, this is the time to see your doctor or your mental health professional. If you've been to paranormal sessions, whether it be paranormal tours or you've done some paranormal investigation, or you've been using paranormal practices like the Ouija board, the seances, you really need to look after your mental health. So please see a doctor. Now, lastly, I'm just mentioning this one again. Please make sure that if you do any of these practices, that you close the portal doorways, even if you're just doing the mirror gazing, because you are putting out the intention to connect with another reality. All sorts of entities can be let into the location, around your energy field, within your energy field, depending on whether you're protected or grounded. So please, please, please make sure that you use safe practices when you are doing your spirit connection. Takes practice, but please stick to the 13 good practices or others that are out there. See what happens. Have some fun with it. If you like the content of this episode today, please think about leaving me a rating and a review. What reviews do is they let other people know your thoughts about my supernatural subject matter. People love reading reviews, and we're spreading the word about the real paranormal world around us. I would really appreciate it. Now let's get back to the episode. Now, really and truly, your intention to connect with a loved one will draw them to you. You see their face, you say their name, they're there, no matter where you are and what you are doing. Just thinking about them and the positive memories you have, that is the easiest and the safest method to connect to them. Really, really is. And make sure too that after you have your connection moment, you let them go with love back to wherever or whatever they're doing on the other side. Because keeping them here, it doesn't serve you or serve them in any way. Having that moment of connection, that is so powerful and so important. But please let them go when you're finished. So in episode 88, we get online to explode an energetic minefield. Katie, a friend and client of mine, asked, can I pick up entities and negative energy online? Katie's energetically sensitive like myself, and she visited a website recently that made her feel instantly unwell in the mind and the body. So she messaged me, and I will share exactly what I found when I did an energy clearing for Katie. So stay tuned for next week's episode as we delve into digital destructiveness. So thank you for joining me today. And don't forget, if you want to share a paranormal experience just with myself, or you would like me to share one of your experiences through my podcast, you can do a voice recording, or you can write out your experience and I will read it exactly as you have written. You can email me at spiritualbeing44@gmail.com. And for information on paranormal house clearing, you can visit my website, Spiritual Being. You will find the address in the description box. And I look forward to sharing this spooky space again with you next week. And remember, life is perfectly paranormal.